Morning everyone, we're back again. A little bit early this week, it's only Friday, but I wanted to start this video a little sooner, show you my process here on pressure testing the AC system. I got all of the lines, the evaporator installed inside, and just trying to get all the fittings and everything lined up here so I could pressure test the system with nitrogen. So I'll just show you what I'm doing, how it's working here. So I bought this gauge set off Amazon. Came with a rotary vane vacuum pump for doing the vacuum, for evacuating the system and putting a vacuum on. It's called Vivo Home. Seems to be a pretty good unit. Had a couple of little issues, but we're dealing with those. So on the actual nitrogen, I had this bottle of nitrogen and started checking, and you need a special regulator for nitrogen. I guess they make different fittings for everything. I didn't want to spend the extra money, another $100 and some for getting fittings. So I started looking around, and what I ended up using was my oxygen regulator off of my oxyacetylene unit. Found out that the nut from the argon for my TIG welder is the right nut, and the stud for the oxygen is the right stud. So that worked out. Then the next dilemma I had was trying to find the proper fitting for hooking up to the recharge test hose on my gauge set. Well, turns out that a 48-8B brass fitting, which is a 5/16 by quarter NPT, this is a 5/16 flare, is exactly the right fitting for that. So once I'm done with my pressure test, I'll put all my regulators back together, and I'm only out of pocket, I think this was $2.20 for this little fitting here. So I've got the lines all hooked up on the system. You'll notice on my gauge set that the low pressure faces this way and the high pressure faces this way. Well, the reason for that, once I got this, the procedure I used was I hooked all the lines up, made sure my two supply valves were closed, the regulator and the bottle were turned off on the nitrogen. Then I opened these two valves, I opened these two valves, opened the nitrogen bottle, started turning in the regulator till I was at about 40 psi, and then I slowly opened these at the same time to bring the pressure up on them. Once the pressures were up to 40, I opened these all the way, and I slowly turned in my regulator until I got to 120 psi, which is as high as that one will go. And then I marked these gauges where the needles were. There's a cellophane wrap on the outside of this, so I'm not marking the gauge itself. And let it sit. And after about an hour, my low side had dropped about 10 psi, so I obviously had a leak somewhere. So using soapy water, I sprayed every joint on the system and could not find a leak anywhere. Then it dawned on me, geez, I better check this Chinesium pressure gauge set and all the fittings. So I sprayed all of the fittings, no leak, until I got to here, and this gauge was leaking around where it screws into the block. So I ended up taking it out, and because it had been put in fairly dry and over tightened, it ended up having to go another half a turn. So now I have gauges are kind of flip-flop. I pressured it back up, and it's now been holding. You can just see my felt pen mark on the plastic. It's been holding 120 psi on both high and low since about 9:30 yesterday morning. So we're good on the pressure side. I don't have to worry about any leaks there. So when I get done with work here a little bit later, it's only 10 after 4 in the morning, I will come back and show you the disconnect, and then I'm going to put the vacuum pump on, pull a vacuum on it, and let that sit for 24 hours as well. So anyhow guys, we'll be back a little bit later today. Okay guys, we're back again. Finally got rid of that work crap out of my hair. So what I've done is release the nitrogen out of the system. I put my regulators back together, put them back on their appropriate tanks, and now I'm going to pull a vacuum on the system here, and I'll just show you. I've got the, I left everything hooked up except for the yellow line, which I've attached to my vacuum pump. And what I'm going to do is I've got my valves are open on my ports. These valves are closed. I'm going to turn the vacuum pump on, and I'm going to slowly open these and let it start pulling a vacuum. And you'll see the gauges, they'll pull down to about 30 inches of mercury. And both sides should be doing the same. Hopefully you can see that. Just let me adjust this. So we're down about 29 right now. Once it does that, I'm going to shut this off. Both of these knobs, shut my pump off. And I'm going to let this sit for an hour. Just to see if it holds that 29, 30 inches of mercury. If it does, then I'm going to open the valves back up, and I'm going to turn the vacuum pump on for 30 minutes just to draw any excess air out of the system. And then once I cap everything, it'll be ready for charging when I fire the engine up. So we'll be back probably in an hour or so. We'll get this all disconnected, and it's time for me to go to work on wiring and stuff here. Still waiting for one fuel fitting, and once the wiring's done, this thing's ready to fire. So getting pretty excited, guys. We'll see you in a bit. Okay guys, we're back here. It's been actually an hour, and we're still sitting at 29 inches of mercury. The other one's the same, so looks like we've got no leaks. The next step now is to run the vacuum pump for half an hour to evac any air that's left in the system. It'll actually be nitrogen because that's what it was charged with, so that's better than having air. So I'll get that done, and while that's happening, I'm going to get to work on wiring and getting in the heater switches and stuff so this thing can get fired up. So that's just a quick update on the AC, and I may have another update on Sunday. So thanks for tuning in, guys, and thanks for all the new subscribers. I'm getting real close to 300, which I never ever dreamed I'd get to. So thanks again, guys. Take care.